much everybody for attending today's virtual boardroom. Philip Addison is helping to facilitate the session around leading for resilience and wellbeing. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to you, Philip.
Okay, oh, thanks, Joe. I really appreciate that. And I'm really pleased to see and welcome everybody on the call this afternoon. And I'm hoping it'll be a very lively and interactive session as well. This basically is a reduced version of a program that I've run for a number of organizations over the last couple of months. So normally this is something I deliver over 3.5 hours. Don't worry, I'm not going to do 3.5 hours today. I'm just giving you the highlights of the program. And I mean, it's an interesting area really, because you know, when I put the program together, you know, I was having real challenges in terms of thinking about, you know, what are the learning objectives, what areas to cover, what not to cover, and really this whole area. I mean, you could do a whole, you know, several months of courses around this. But anyway, I'm just going to do, just do the highlights for you today. I'm going to run through a little bit of background first of all. We'll start off with a bit of a quiz just to test your knowledge. Don't worry, I'm not going to mark the papers. And then we're going to look at some aspects of stress. I'm going to introduce you to a stress model, another stress model. There are various ones out there, but this is one that I find particularly useful in the context of looking at resilience and well-being. Then we'll move on to looking at your responsibilities as managers, our responsibilities as HR people as well. And I think most of the people, I know not everybody, maybe it's just a show of hands, who has an HR background on the call. Oh yeah, pretty much. Okay, pretty much everybody. Okay, well, so do I as well. I was an HRD for an organisation called Accor, they're a French hotel operator. So we operate in the UK. Say we, that's how long I was there for. I'm not there anymore. Anyway, yeah, so Accor operate as Novotel, Sofitel, Mercure, Ibis, along with a load of other brands as well. So I was HRD for 17 years. So all my background is in HR. And with a strong bent towards training and development for the business. Obviously, in hotels, customer service was a really crucial area, and engagement as well. So I have a lot of experience in terms of HR and employee relations as well. And this is what I'm trying to blend in a little bit into this program as well. We won't have a great deal of time to talk about this today, but when I run the full session, we do spend time looking at various case studies around mental health in the workplace. And interesting enough, actually, the program I'm referring to, I run more as a generic program for managers, but I did also started with the intention of maybe designing something specifically for HR people, because I think I believe there's a need, and I think it could be a great way of maybe me facilitating some exchange of ideas, which is always powerful. So maybe at the end, if there's any interest in that, it would be great to maybe talk to you about that. So let me start with the quiz. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Sorry, I've given you the answers there. If you were quick, you might have seen the answers there. So yes, so welcome to the Leading for Wellbeing and Resilience webinar. So this is my company, which I started at the beginning of last year. Not the best timing, but anyway, Learn Resilience, and obviously with Joe and HR Recruit. So if you just want, this is just for you really. So the first question: stress, anxiety, and depression are the third biggest causes of sickness absence in our society. Is that true? Is that false? So maybe just write it down or just have it in your own mind. Anybody want to shout out? True?
True.
True. Well, sorry, it's actually false. Slightly trick question, sorry. they're the biggest. So stress, anxiety, depression are the biggest in terms of working days lost. So 57% of the working days lost in 2017-18, according to the Health and Safety Executive, were work-related stress, were related to work-related stress, anxiety and depression. And of course, those statistics might be higher because this is, I guess, would be taken off the doctor's fit note. And in some cases, doctors don't like to actually put down the fact that people have had work-related stress. They might put it down to other reasons. So yeah, so it's you know, I guess everybody appreciates it's a major area of causing sickness absence to our society, and it is actually a worldwide. You know, it's the same phenomenon worldwide. Mental ill health costs UK employees an estimated 33 to 42 billion per year. Before COVID, actually, a billion sounded quite a lot, but when you look at what's been pumped in around furlough, it's maybe not so, but it's still a lot of money. But it's maybe slightly more realistic. So is that true? Is that false? Anybody like to have a go?
True.
True. Yes. Yeah, it is true. And in fact, if you start adding in other things like presenteeism, in particular, it's estimated it's costing around about 100 billion to the UK economy. So it's a major factor. If you want to relate this back to you as an employer, I think the figures is something like 1,300 on average per employee. So if you just multiply up the number of employees that you've got in your organisation by 1,300, that'll give you an idea of the cost that it's costing your business. Suicide is the leading cause of death for men under 50. Under 50. Is that true or false? Men under 50 in the UK.
True.
Yeah, unfortunately, it is true, and it's obviously the statistic is shocking, but also you know, it's the fact that a lot of this is preventable if people get the right intervention, but people who are diagnosed with mental health conditions, including work-related stress, are shown to be at higher risk of attempting or completing suicide. So this is a major factor in terms of work-related stress and the correlation with suicide rates as well. Yeah, so unfortunately, it's true. 40% of the people diagnosed with mental health illnesses receive no treatment at all. Is that true or false?
False.
False?
Probably true.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't catch whoever said it's false. What would you say it's false?
It was
You think
me.
it's higher or lower?
Probably lower.
You think it's lower? Well, unfortunately, no, it's false. It's a shocking 75% of people with diagnosable mental health illnesses don't receive any treatment at all. And these are figures from, well, actually quite dated figures, actually 2014. But I would imagine the situation has probably got worse. And if anybody either works in the NHS or is dealing with the NHS around mental health issues, they'll know the stress that the NHS is under through mental health, people presenting with mental health conditions and challenges, and it's you know, the system is really creaking. So it's a real problem that we have. And again, the real shame in this situation is that actually we know that early intervention is crucial, and early intervention often is very successful at bringing people round and recovery, not always, but helping them to recover. So you know, if we can encourage people to seek treatment, go to the GP and hopefully start some treatment, we know that that's going to be very beneficial in terms of helping them to recover more quickly. So that gives you a little bit of the landscape, if you like, we're dealing with here. And just here, these are the learning objectives the objectives for the webinar today. So first of all, to be able to explain the difference between pressure and stress, and I'm going to come on to this. Understand your role in reducing stress within your team, and that could be either from a perspective of supporting the team from an HR perspective, but also the people working directly within your team. Use the resilience threshold model, and I'll introduce you to that. Also be able to list, or at least be familiar with, the 6 health and safety executive management standards and be able to apply those in your workplace. And also to know what type of leader you want to be in respect of your own team's well-being. So these are some of the areas that I want to work on. So first of all, we're going to look at this issue of what stress is. And this is where I wanted to explain a little bit about the difference between stress and pressure, because I think it's quite important, because we use these terms. So it's important for you to understand the terms that I'm using as part of today's session. So, and this is from the health and safety executive. And I think, again, both this and also the management standards, I've chosen to incorporate into this session because the health and safety executive obviously are the leading body in this area for the UK. So what's the health and safety sector? Make a distinction between pressure, which is part of the normal day-to-day reasonable demands that we all face in our jobs. So we all, for all of us, our experience is that we will experience pressure, and pressure will ebb and flow, day by day, hour by hour, depending on what's happening within the workplace. But the definition of health and safety executive says, that pressure, whilst it goes up and down, is fine as long as it's manageable and it's appropriate. It becomes more problematic when that pressure becomes intense, continuous, or prolonged, and it becomes excessive pressure and becomes detrimental to the health of employees. And this is where the health and safety executive says that excessive pressure, they translate into work-related stress. So stress is the reaction that people have to excessive pressure or on other types of demands placed upon them. So this is the distinction I'm making, and this is why if you read information in the health and safety executives publications, they will say to you that work-related stress is never a good thing. Whereas obviously we all know that to have a little bit of pressure on a day-to-day basis, we need, and that's helpful in sort of driving forward our performance. So that's pressure versus stress. Now, I want to just extend that into something which is called the resilience threshold, stress resilience threshold model. So sorry, it's maybe a little bit academic, but I think hopefully you'll understand the practical use of it as we go on through the session. So again, you've got on the vertical axis there, you've got low and high pressure. So in a way, you could say if you're at a high end, that's stress. If you're at the lower end, that's more pressure. And in between that, and the where you have this threshold, this resilience threshold, is if you're operating over time below the line, below the resilience threshold, then generally you're well mentally and physically. And again, there's a lot of evidence here that says we should be looking at the whole, taking more of a holistic approach to well-being, including both physical and mental, because there's such a crossover between the two. If you're operating above the line, then that's work-related stress, and that will often lead to you being unwell and will lead to burnout and other issues. So, as I say, on a day-to-day basis, we'll find that the pressure that we feel will ebb and flow depending on what's happening and depending on what's happening within our jobs, within our workplaces, but also within our personal lives as well. So we have this blend between work and home, and we all experience that. If we've had a crosswords with our partner or our children or other people that are close to us, that does create stress. Sorry, well, it can do. It depends on the level of argument, but it can certainly create pressure for you when you go to work in the work situation, and it will be playing on your mind. So you can't really separate the two. But of course, there are life events that happen that can move us across and over the threshold. So, for example, if you take on a new job, that can be, for those of you taking on new jobs, you recognize that actually that's a pretty stressful time. And if we're not careful, some of these events and things like separation, bereavement, probably things that, okay, we can just about cope with if they don't, if the pressure doesn't become too overwhelming and too continuous. But if our feelings around these life events continue for a longer period, then that can make us quite unwell, and we can start to experience anxiety, depression, and other mental health conditions. That's the resilience threshold model I'll come back to a little bit later. So I just wanted to sort of introduce you to that, and just for you to bear that in mind as we go forward. So what about your responsibilities as leaders? Now, I guess you pretty well understand these, but just to make it clear, all employers have a common law duty of care to their employees. So that means you have to take steps which are reasonably practical steps to ensure the health, safety, and well-being of your employees. Again, I'm pretty sure everybody will understand from a health and safety perspective that we need to take care of this, but maybe sometimes, and when you talk to people from the health and safety executive, they recognise that the balance has maybe been so far very much on the sort of physical health and safety, and they want to move the balance, and they are moving the balance more towards the well-being side of that equation as well, recognising that well-being of employees is absolutely crucial. So you have that common law duty under that, and also health and safety legislation. Also, we have, and as HR people, you'll be familiar with this, we have legal responsibilities. So we've got to apply to the relevant employment law. And in the case of where we're talking about well-being and mental health, that comes under the heading of discrimination and under the disability legislation if the mental health condition is of a serious nature, impacts the person's performance on a day-to-day basis, and is likely to last for a long period, which normally is, let's say, 12 months. So many of the mental health conditions that you will come across would fall under the disability discrimination protective characteristic. And in that case, then there is a need for us, a requirement for us to make reasonable adjustments to make sure that people who have mental health conditions or disabilities in this area are treated fairly and reasonably in comparison with other people. So there's the legal point, but again, I'm sure as HR people, you also understand there's a moral and an ethical duty not to cause or fail to prevent physical or psychological injury. And if we do, if we are neglectful in this area, then obviously there's also the personal injury and negligence claims that we could face. So there's a whole stack of stuff here that's leading us, particularly as HR people, to have appropriate and effective policies and procedures and practice in this area. So just some of the duties, some of the requirements here under the employee's duty of care is to define jobs clearly and undertake risk assessments. And that's particularly where the jobs could contain an element of work-related stress. So some examples here would be if people are dealing with customers, we know that's something which is likely to be very stressful. Shift patterns, night working can also be things that can cause risk as well as maybe if you're in an occupation where you're dealing with, maybe things like social care, medical professions, where you may be dealing with individuals who have very distressing, and you're having to respond to and deal with some very distressing incidents. You have to ensure a safe working environment, and that means around the aspects of well-being as well. Provide adequate training and feedback on performance and effective feedback on performance that's both, that supports people's well-being. So that's about making sure that you're giving balanced feedback and putting in some positives as well as as well as maybe some constructive criticisms as well. Ensure staff don't do excessive hours, and we know the working time directive, etc., and that's still in place, but also it's covered by health and safety legislation in this country anyway. Provide areas for rest and relaxation, and I think increasingly we're being asked to make sure that it's our responsibility as HR people and leaders to make sure that people take the appropriate rests and relaxation. We can't just abdicate that and say, well, we made it available to them. We've actually got to be more proactive in this area. Protect staff from bullying and harassment from colleagues or from third parties, or even in a lot of cases from their managers as well. Protect staff from discrimination. That means both within the work, but also within the within the working environment as well. Provide communication channels for employees to raise concerns. So if they have concerns, this is through grievance procedures, staffing groups, etc. And also to consult with employees on issues which concern them. So if you are proposing to make changes, under employment law that there is a responsibility for you to consult as well. But we'll come on to this. Change is a big risk factor in terms of people's well-being, and so this is an area where if you are making changes, it's important for you to consult with individuals around those changes. So just to press on a little bit, and I'm not sure whether people are familiar with the health and safety executive 6 management standards in this area, but if you go onto the health and safety executive site, and if you just put in there, do a search on well-being, work-related stress, they've got a lot of information and actually some fantastic resources which are available to you. But these are 6 management standards that they came up with a few years ago, and these are things that they would use to test your policies and procedures and practice in this area. So the first one is about management demands. So this is about things like workload, work patterns, and the working environment. So it's about making sure that the demands that you make as management or as an organisation are that employees are able to meet the demands that you place upon them. Because obviously, if you have a situation where you're demanding more than it actually is reasonably possible, that can be a very stressful situation for the individual. So that's what this management standard is about. I won't do this for all of them, but there's also information, and I've just got briefly there. So what the standard is. So the standard is that employees indicate that they're able to cope with the demands of their jobs, and systems are in place locally to respond to any individual concerns. And you'll see that in the other 5 I'm going to cover, but I won't dwell on those because I want to get on to doing have some discussion around this. So the second one is about control, and this is about how much say people have in the way that they do their work. Again, this obviously will depend on the context of the organisation and the context of the work. So there could be some work which, by its nature, if it's scientific, for example, or working in a lab, then there have to be some very tight control procedures in place. But I think in general, it's making sure that you're not micromanaging people, and because people do find that, again, very stressful, very restrictive. Of course, we need to bear in mind, it depends on their experience within the job, and when people are first starting, then they will probably expect and anticipate that they're going to have quite high levels of control. But as they start to become confident in what they're doing, then again, most of us would expect the managers to step away and not interfere too much in the day-to-day aspects of the role. The third one is about support, and this includes encouragement, sponsorship, resources provided by the organisation, by line managers and colleagues. So this is about, do you have the tools to do the job? Are people providing you with the training, the coaching, and are you getting the support from both from your line manager and also from your colleagues? So that's support. Then we have relationships, and this is about promoting a positive working relationship which avoids conflict and dealing with unacceptable behaviour. So this is about making sure there's no harassment or bullying in the workplace, but also that maybe more, taking steps to ensure that there's a more positive working relationship, good team building, that people are getting on, but also responsibility for dealing effectively and quickly with any unacceptable behaviour within the team, and making sure that those relationships remain as sort of harmonious as they possibly can. Next is role, this is about, this includes whether people understand their role within the organisation, and whether the organisation ensures that the person does not have a conflict within their roles. Again, we'll understand that if you have role conflict, and if you're not exactly totally clear on what your role is, that can lead to stress in the workplace. So I know it's not always possible to absolutely clearly define what the role is and put it down in a job description or something like that. I totally get that these things can be very dynamic, but it's maybe having a process in place that makes sure that you allow people to question or to challenge any conflict within the role, and there's mechanisms in place for you to have some clarification around that. And then the final one, which I mentioned before, actually, is around change, and this is about how the organisation, changes, large and small, are managed and communicated to the organisation within the organisation. Generally, I think if we're doing big reorganisations or big changes, we're pretty good at communicating that. But not all organisations maybe are quite as good in terms of small things, and there tends sometimes to be maybe a sort of an approach that says, well, it's only a small change, why should they bother? But we all know when those small changes are imposed on us, it can have quite a big effect. And of course, often the people who are making the decisions in terms of changes maybe don't always fully understand the implications of the changes on the individuals that are doing the job. So always good practice, and I'm sure as HR people you understand this, always good practice to talk to people and consult with them about the changes. And it's a consultative approach. It's not participative management. It's about just saying, so you do understand what the changes are, what the implications of those changes are, and therefore you can move things through and hopefully reduce any stress that might happen as a result of that. So these are the 6 management standards. So if you haven't already done so, you might just want to jot those down, because I'm going to show you a little case study now around a guy called Dan, and this is produced by the Health and Safety Executive. And in here you'll find that Dan is talking about his work-related stress, and what I would ask you to do, and then after this I'm going to put you into breakout groups. If you could have a quick, if you watch the video, and if you could just note down where you see any of the management standards either mentioned or referred to, and you can see the impact that these are having on Dan, and also you pick up some more general signs of stress that you might want to note down as well. So let me switch. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute, and then I can share the video. Where's the video going? Sorry, it just seems to have dropped out a minute. Sorry, I'll just have to reboot it. No, it's there. Right. Okay.
More difficult. We were no longer allowed to make decisions.
Sorry.
Tell me about your job.
I'm a housing officer. Initially, I really liked my job, liked helping people and knowing what I'd achieved at the end of the day.
Did you feel pressured?
There was always a lot of pressure with the job. Some of the customers could be very emotional. Well, you would be too if you'd been living for a year in B&B accommodation with your kids. But we helped each other out, and I kind of liked being busy, getting things done.
When did the pressure start to become excessive?
There wasn't just one day, it was a gradual process. I think in hindsight, there were probably 3 big things that affected me over the course of about 6 months. A number of colleagues who had a lot of experience left, and a new manager was drafted in from another department. He was very nice. He just didn't know very much about housing. He changed the way we do things, which made our lives more difficult. We were no longer allowed to make decisions based on the way we thought we should do our jobs. All these protocols just made it harder to deal with people, not easier. On top of all this, my relationship at home was going through a rocky patch. I was trying to help out my colleagues all the time. I was trying to get through more customers, and my manager didn't know how to help me.
When did you realise you were stressed?
I don't think I ever really realised what actually being stressed meant. I know now that I was exhibiting, classic symptoms. I couldn't stop thinking about work. I was feeling guilty about the customers that I couldn't help. On top of this, my physical health started to suffer. I wasn't sleeping at night. I was drinking in the evenings to try and help myself sleep. In the past, I used to get into work early to get a head start, but I went through a phase where I just couldn't even get into work on time. I know now that I was just desperate to stay out of the office, because when I was there, I was so miserable.
Okay, Joe, could you, because I need to now go to the breakout group, so. Oh.
You should be the host now, Philip.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about this. Right. Okay. So what I'm going to do is put you into breakout groups, and maybe to give you 10 minutes to do this, and just review this in your groups, just to and to see if which of the 6, if you can identify something on each of the 6. You should have seen something on each of them, and also highlight any aspects of work-related signs of stress that Dan talked about. So let me put you in. We've got 20, so let's do. Okay, so I'll see you in about 10 minutes.
I think we're all back, Philip.
Okay. Okay, I was just checking. So hopefully you found that an interesting discussion, and the framework of the 6 management standards, I think, is quite useful. I find it quite useful to look at it from that perspective. I don't know if anybody wants to sort of open up and summarize what their group, some things that their group found. Is anybody who would be happy to do that?
I don't mind giving you a little bit on
brilliant. Thanks,
our group.
Okay.
For me, for example, I saw everything in all of them quite clearly, but the one I didn't see, but the rest of the group did, was the demands. Because I was thinking from an employer point of view, I couldn't see that the demands had increased, but it was more, we identified it was more from the client's point of view, that they were putting more demands on, and because they weren't getting what they wanted and things like that. So that's what came across more in our group. And then obviously all the others, they were quite clear around support and control and loss of experience.
Yes.
We could have gone on forever, I think.
Yeah, but there's
and then,
yeah, go on. Sorry. Yeah,
And
what I was
then-
going to say is actually, if you go onto the website, if you go onto the Health and Safety Executive website, there is a questionnaire that you can use. It's very comprehensive. I wouldn't necessarily suggest that you use it all, but actually it gives you some really good questions that if you were maybe doing a home visit with somebody and you really wanted to understand, you know, if they were saying, well, I want off with work-related stress, if you wanted to hone down onto what those areas are, there's a whole load of questions that you can ask that would help you to determine, you know, well, is it, I mean, of course, it might be all 6, but it will help you to maybe fine tune which areas the individual may be experiencing stress from in particular, because then that allows you, if it is, let's say, it is about demands. And I think one of the things that he did say was a number of people had left, they hadn't necessarily been replaced. So, but also there'd been an increase in customers, and the customers are becoming more demanding. So the whole situation, from a number of issues there, that the demands of the role were getting quite big, quite intense. So yeah, so I think if you can determine, you know, where's the stress really coming from for the individual, that can help you maybe put a plan in place to say, okay, well, how can we go about addressing this, and also give you an indication in terms of reasonable adjustments. At a more how can I position it, at a more sort of, you know, HR professional standpoint, you've done a good analysis that if you are challenged in the future, you know, you'll be able to present something that says, you know, it wasn't just a home visit and how you're doing and how you're feeling. We actually did, or it could also be a return to work visit as well. You know, we actually did explore, and I used the health and safety management standards to have that conversation with the individual. Any other points that anybody wanted to make, or anything that was any observations?
We mostly talked about the change in management style, so that the
Yes.
new manager coming in didn't allow them to have that control of being able to make their own decisions. So he micromanaged them, and that
Yep.
sort of the change in that management style probably wasn't dealt with very well. And
Yep.
also, obviously, so that the more pressure that they have, then they're not being able to change the way that they do things to be able to adapt
Yep.
to different situations, creates more of a pressure. And then
Yeah.
that obviously affects the relationship with the manager as well.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. Yeah, it's certainly the case. And often if there's a change in management, we will probably have experienced this ourselves. You know, they bring a new manager, brings maybe a different style, and also changes. And, you know, of course, we're only getting one side of the picture here. So, you know, we're getting looking at it through a slightly different, just one lens, really. But yeah, there's some indications here that the manager maybe hasn't been doing a very thorough induction, hasn't taken the time maybe to get to know the team very well before sort of coming in and trying to make their mark. And of course, you know, that's often, that can often be the case. You know, people come into a new job, they're very enthusiastic, they may want to make changes because they see things and they want, right, let's change it. But again, some of those things can, you know, if they're imposed on people, and people are always going to be a bit, you know, we don't, as humans, we don't like change. So yeah, so that's some good observations there. So yeah, hopefully say you would have found that quite useful. I'm going to show you a second video, which actually includes the manager, but looks at 2 different scenarios. It looks at Dan 3 months later, where there has been intervention from the manager and the company, and the impact that has. And the second one is where there hasn't been too much interaction with the company or the manager, and the impact that has. It may be, sorry, the other way around actually. Anyway, let me show it to you. And there we go.
Do you think you'll go back to work soon?
I don't know. Just the thought of it makes me feel panicky and stressed. Nothing's changed. I couldn't cope then, and I still don't think I could cope with that place now. I don't know what they think about me. I mean, no one's kept in touch by phone or email. Maybe they don't want me back.
Would you like to get back to work?
Of course. I don't like moping around at home. Makes things worse with my girlfriend. She's worried about the future. Will we have enough money if I'm on incapacity benefit? I really like my job. I wish it could be like it used to be. But now I feel like there's a black mark against me.
Do you think Dan will come back to work soon?
I hope so. He was a key part of the team, but he's off sick now. I don't phone. I don't want to hassle him. If he comes back, he comes back. I guess there's not much I can do about it. Just leave him to come back in his own time. I'm too busy to think about it at the moment. I've got too much to do. Just need to concentrate on the people who are still here.
Dan, you're back at work now. Can you tell me how this happened?
Actually, I was really surprised. My boss was really supportive. I didn't think he cared. I thought he'd think I was a right pain for leaving them with all my work to do. But he called me up the week that I went off sick just to check in with me and to let me know that they could make changes to my job role. I had a one-to-one meeting and it really helped. We decided to adjust my workload and also how the whole team does the work. Now I'm back at work and I feel so much more in control. It's a relief to know that I can do the job well, and at last I feel valued.
As Dan's manager, what steps have you taken to try and make sure that Dan won't get stressed at work again?
I have to admit it was a shock when I heard that Dan was off work with stress. I hadn't realised it was going on. I went straight to the HR department. I wanted to know what policies we'd got at work that could help deal with this. And it was useful talking things through with them. Then when I met with Dan to have a meeting about how to help him get back to work, we looked in detail at the things that were making him stressed. We went through the 6 causes of stress that the management standards suggest. And the main thing was Dan's workload. We were able to deal with that straight away by making some changes to Dan's job role. I'm making sure that I do things like monitor Dan's workload to make sure that he doesn't get too busy again. I looked at the team's workload and I noticed to my horror that Dan's going off sick was just potentially the tip of an iceberg. I realised that we'd got to make some changes quickly. So I introduced an open door strategy. I made sure that all the staff were aware of stress and that they could come to me and talk things through, and that if there were any difficulties, we could get them sorted out. From talking to HR, it's apparent that ours isn't the only team experiencing problems, and they tell me that they're going to introduce a Wellworker initiative based on the HSE management standards for managing stress at work. And apparently this is going to involve staff at all levels across the company identifying where things could be going wrong and how they can be put right.
Okay, so yeah, so oh, sorry.
You all right, Philip? Everyone's back?
Yeah, sorry, yeah, it's just yeah, right. Sorry, I just need to master the technology of going between one format and another. So yeah, I think it gives you an indication, I think, of how you respond as a manager, or more as maybe more as an organisation, can have a massive impact in how people respond and to work-related stress, and particularly if people off with stress. And there is this feeling that if somebody's off with work-related stress, that we shouldn't contact them because that might just add to the stressful situation. I think, okay, yeah, sure. it needs to be done in a very sensitive way, and you need to think about the timing of any interventions. But I think it's like with any other work-related sickness, absence. It's always good to follow up and just to have those conversations along people's journey. In this case, we saw in the second scenario, the manager had used the management standards and had gained a lot of information, and that had been very helpful for for Dan in that situation. So just to return to the slides. So yeah, just to demonstrate and to sort of link back a little bit to to the stress resilience threshold. So what we got here is a situation where somebody, as we said, they're dated on a day-to-day basis. The pressure in their job is going up and down, but it's below their threshold. So everything's okay. But if you look at Dan's situation, what happened with the change of manager was that the effect of the new change of manager coming in meant that his resilience threshold lowered. Not only due to the manager, but he also talks about things like his relationship at home with his girlfriend wasn't going too well. He knew that he was drinking too much. So there are other factors coming in here. But this is about this is for me to demonstrate that the management standards, how that can affect people's and how that can move people into the sort of unwell zone from a situation where normally they're able to cope with what happens on a day-to-day basis. And of course, the opposite is true as well. If you take positive action in these 6 areas, that can help people to move their resilience threshold up, and therefore reduce the likelihood of them experiencing difficulties with their poor mental health, poor fitness, mental health fitness, and well-being. So that's the sort of end, if you like, of the session for today. Just to say, as I mentioned, this is part of a program that I run normally over 3.5 hours, but can be bespoke for you as an organisation. So leading for resilience and well-being. I'm also a qualified mental health first aid instructor. So I run the 2-day program, the 1-day program, and the awareness program. So if you want to talk about those programs or are interested, I've got a few programs coming up where I've actually got some spare places over the next couple of months. So if anybody wants to make contact with me, I'll be very happy to talk you through that. And at the moment, I'm offering some quite discounted prices as well. If you go onto my website, which I'll give you details of, or if you ask for a copy of these slides, when you get the slides, I put all my programs are on something. It's quite a useful little tool actually called a Padlet. I don't know if anybody's come across it, but anyway, if you just click on this link, it'll take you to a page which has all the details of all the programs that I run, and how you might sort of prices and how you might want to book onto these in the future. Yeah, here's my contact details. So if you want to visit my website, learnresilience.com, very happy if you want to connect with me through LinkedIn, that would be great. And if you want to use the old-fashioned, now it's become the old-fashioned email, there's my email address, philipaddison@btinternet.com. So very happy now. Oh, sorry. Also, I'm not going to go through this because quite a lot of information on this slide, but these are very useful contacts, I think, for you. So again, if you ask for the slides, you'll have this with the links, and it will give you, there's governments, a government have brought together, tried to bring together all the mental health services within the NHS through improving access to psychological therapy. Some people might be familiar with this, but it's a really useful site to visit. Also, if you go the local mental health services, which can be accessed by your GP, if you go on that link, you just put in your postcode, the postcode for your GP surgery, and it will tell you the various services that may be available through the surgery, because they are different for in different areas and different surgeries. And the final one is access to work, which is mental health support. And again, if you click on that link, that will take you through to the access to work providers. and one of those is called Able Futures. I don't have any any connection with them, but they're Able Futures. Another one is Reemploy. These are the two main ones. And what they basically do is that they will offer advice to you and also to any of your employees absolutely free. It's not counselling, it's more vocational support. So if people are suffering in the workplace, experiencing mental health conditions in the workplace, or maybe if they've gone off sick with mental health conditions, really useful service for them to contact, and they will support them through that. So all these links will be on the slides if you ask Joe for them after the webinar. So I think we're just over the 1:30. I'm very happy to answer any questions that anybody might have. Otherwise, it's been really great to meet everybody, even if it's over Zoom. Thank you very much for for joining today and participating. And I hope you've enjoyed it and got lots out of it. So, any questions anybody has, I'm happy. I'll stay online. But otherwise, have a great afternoon, and hopefully we may meet each other in the future.
I'd just like to say thanks very much to everybody for joining. We're actually running a webinar tomorrow. If anybody's interested, I will send everybody an email this afternoon with all the details. It's actually being facilitated by Yvonne Saxon, and it's about returning workers to the office or remote working and some of the legal implications of what we can and can't do. So if you're interested in that, and then we've got another webinar next week, which is about influencing key stakeholders within an organisation. So I'll put those on the email. But yeah, massive thanks, Philip, for facilitating, and I hope everybody's enjoyed it. So thanks very much.
Thank you so much, Philip.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Nice.